Good day, Chairman. It's a beautiful day out there in Tone Town.
What's it like, Mason? What's the weather looking
the birds
like
are chirping. The skies are sunny. And we are ready to forward ourselves and educate ourselves better on a topic that I'm incredibly excited about. And as you might have guessed it, we're going to be talking about our friends over at Guitar Player Magazine. And what I appreciate about Guitar Player Magazine, for some of its faults, is they are still willing to give a quality review to somebody who has not necessarily endorsed some of their videos. They recently wrote up our boost, shameless plug, gave us 4.5 stars, editor's pick. Grant said they should have given us 5.
Agreed.
But Agreed. They still gave us a nice review in spite of us just doing a total hatchet job to their cable article, their amp article, and today their distortion pedal recommendations article. But before we do that, I think we just need to talk about a quick icebreaker, something that's been on my mind. Have you guys noticed with people on Instagram that are, sort of like, let's call them like Z-list celebrities, like people who are guitar players that maybe, like, if you're really, really in the know, you might know who they are, but they're not yet worthy of the blue check mark. And then they will put the words official after their name. Yep. John Smith official.
One layer above that, though, is you have to start with the John Smith official.
John Smith official.
It. Yep.
And I'm using John Smith not because there actually is a John Smith out there. This is just an arbitrary John Smith, not the John Smith official. And I was just wondering, does that work? Like I see a lot of people do it. And I was just thinking maybe we should just do like an unofficial. Chairman of the board's unofficial.
Yep.
Not official. Does it really work official to differentiate yourself with the unofficial as a Z-list celebrity? I don't know, but maybe it's something I'm considering is either adding official or just going completely sort of like Primus and just sort of making fun of yourself. And any thoughts on that, gentlemen, before we begin?
I think if there is an option for tongue in cheek, I will take it. And so your thoughts of putting out the unofficial, I'm a big fan of, or even, chairman of the board's fake account, or this is run by bots, chairman of the board.
Definitely not official. Chairman of the board's definitely not official.
We may scam you, chairman of the boards.
Yeah.
I think the official thing, I always give myself a little chuckle because, who's to say? You made up that name on the spot, and there's really nothing more official about it than just the fact you're able to type it into your account.
Yeah. Chairman of the boards, message me on Telegram. That's what we need.
Yes, there we go.
That's how we know. Well, with that out of the way, I think that we need to get into this article quickly. Now, our friends over at Guitar Player Magazine, in essence, the thesis of the article is to give you a variety of distortion pedals at different price points that will get you into distortion and high gain bliss. And the criticism, if you've not listened to any of our Let's Look at Guitar Players recommendations sort of podcast episodes, and then we proceed to give our own, which we'll do today as well, is that it seemingly omits classic pedals in many cases that are really sort of the groundbreaking pedals or the groundbreaking products in those categories or legacy products in those categories. But it also seems to lack justification or maybe even understanding of what it is that they're writing about. And so I think it's important before we delve into these distortion devices to maybe get a definition for the listener or viewer as to what we mean when we say distortion pedal as opposed to, let's say, overdrive pedal. Because sometimes those terms are collapsed. Understandably, if we're talking from a technical standpoint, both overdrives and distortion pedals are creating a type of distortion that we would categorize in instrumentation if we're looking at the way that they clip. So in that sense, an overdrive could technically be a distortion, and a distortion could be a distortion, and a fuzz could be a distortion, and that they're all creating this clipping and type of distortion as it would be known on the technical side. But we have sort of a different definition as it relates to players to sort of distinguish the category of overdrive versus distortion. I have my definition, but I'd like to hear from you first, either Grant or Brian, as to how you distinguish for somebody the difference between what is, say, an overdrive pedal versus a distortion pedal. Who would like to start?
I can take this one.
All right.
I'll say my first qualifier for a distortion pedal is probably that I don't really enjoy it that much. So, but in all seriousness, I think I would say a distortion
not
pedal.
distortion curious. So.
I'm not. Well, my distortion curious days are behind me, and now I know what I like.
It's like torn Levi's. You tried it for a while, and just
exactly. We all have. We've all been there. We've all put our leg into a torn set of Levi's and ripped the holes even more trying to get them on. Like
it was a college thing.
It's just not the life I want. I've lived that life and I've moved on. So I would say a distortion in my mind, if I was to clarify for someone that wasn't a guitar player, let's say I was trying to describe it to my mom. Doesn't play guitar, although she may be guitar curious.
Madam Klassen.
I would say it is where you have overdrive being a pedal that is going to typically try and simulate the sound of your amp being pushed. Touch sensitive. It can clean up really well with your guitar's volume pod or you're playing really softly. A distortion is even when you're playing lightly, it's on. It is going to be higher gain, not really all that touch sensitive, and it's just going to have that super overdriven type of sound. So you think like the most classic example in my mind, when someone says distortion, first thing that comes to my mind is a Rat. If you're not familiar with that, you will be familiar with the memes of like a Boss Metal Zone. And there is not really a low gain setting, although there is. But when you turn on a Metal Zone, it just takes over everything and you can't miss it. And so in my mind, that would be kind of how I would describe a distortion pedal. It's higher gain. It's not touch sensitive. And it really is just, if you're going into metal or rock, it's probably heavy rock. It's probably something that you're going to want to be using. That's my lo-fi example of what distortion is. Brian, what about you?
Yeah, mine would be real similar because I also do not like distortion pedals. I'm just not a fan of them, never have been. And from like my definition of it would be the same. It's higher gain. It's what I had the name in my head. Harsher. It's a lot harsher of a sound too. It doesn't clean up well. I mean, you could turn everything down as much as possible, but yeah, no, you'll see more distortion, and that's the same thing. People are like, oh, I need a distortion on my board, but why? It's like, oh, I just need another gain stage. Sometimes they already have 3 or 4 overdrives or other stuff on their board. But yeah, that would be mine. It's a heavier gain, harsher harsher tone that's mostly seen and heavier. I mean, there's a lot of rock people that use it too. People use it in different. That's the cool thing about pedals is so many people use them in so many different ways. And how they get those tones. So, but yeah, simple as heavier gain, harsher tone than a overdrive. That's what that's what comes to my mind at first.
I am curious to hear your definition, Mason, because you actually produce these types of pedals, and so I would love to actually hear what's a more proper definition of this to educate all of us.
I think the way that people have normally differentiated them on the manufacturer side is typically between hard clipping and soft clipping to sort of indicate distortion, and maybe stuff that maybe isn't quite fuzz but getting closer to a square wave maybe is kind of where some of those differentiations are. I think that we tend to think of overdrive pedals as more soft clipping, more symmetrical, more even harmonics. So, classic tube screamers, clones, blues breakers, these are all sort of examples of softer clipping. And then when we're talking about hard clipping, asymmetrical, odd harmonic structure. We're talking about, Boss DS1, Metal Zone, things that certainly, as you have described, more aggressive. I don't know that I would necessarily say less touch sensitive, because they're still sort of rooted in the same way to generate distortion, but the way that the circuit is designed as far as the type of harmonics that it's going to produce are a little different. But there's only so many ways to create a distortion sound, and most of the pedals that do that, whether it be overdrive or distortion, still have some common ground between them. I would say that they don't necessarily have to be harsher, but I think that some pedals that have become more popular in the distortion realm tend to be more harsh, like the Rat being an example of that. But I think there's also some great versions of distortion that, can be very musical. The Governor circuits, I think among them in the derivatives, whether that be the JHS Angry Charlie or the Andy Timmons stuff, or another pedal we'll talk about more later that I really love is the Maxon SD9, which is rooted from the Ibanez SD9, which is the sonic distortion, and that's become a hugely popular pedal amongst kind of fusion guys that are into the Michael Landau or Scott Henderson type thing, and that can sound really musical and warm and touch sensitive. But I think that the typical differentiator, as I said, is sort of going between soft clipping, symmetrical, even harmonics, to hard clipping, asymmetrical, and more odd harmonics, and I think that this is typically what is associated with the sort of the two different styles of pedal. I think though that they got a lot more gain. They tend to emulate things that are more distorted, and I think for some people who are used to playing stuff that's not that high gain, it can automatically be a turnoff. But they can be dialed to be more subtle if that's what you want. But I think now that we have a basic understanding of kind of where we're coming from and what our basic definition is, I think let's dive into the guitar player list. So let's start first with their first pick as the number one pick for distortion pedals as a product guide. They have decided, let's see, we want to share the whole thing. There we go. They have decided that they think that the Rat is the best choice. Now, I think that this is actually a really great pedal, even if you're getting a Rat 2 or really any incarnation of the Rat. They have their merits in what they do. I think for indie music, I think for some pop music, these can be really cool. I would say that they don't sound so good to me in front of stuff that I think in front of really clean amps, they can be definitely harsh sounding. I think that they tend to do better into, I'm going to say I prefer these into maybe slightly more mid-range amps because they tend to be pretty scooped. But there's been people who've used them effectively in a lot of different ways. They're very reasonable at what they do. I think you can get a Rat for the low to mid $100 range, maybe less used. I think that this is actually, it's not an egregious number one choice, but it definitely has its detractors, and they can be very, just as the Tube Screamer has its detractors, the Rat can definitely be polarizing. What are your thoughts on the Rat as the first choice on their picks?
Man.
I think, as far as a distortion pedal, this has got to be one of the first ones that come to mind. It's just, this is the epitome of distortion. So I can see why they would put it as number one, but I think it's more, in my mind, it would probably be the most well-known, maybe, rather than the best, as in the number one, if you're going to get a distortion this is automatically what you need to get. I don't know if I would necessarily go this route. I did bring out this one that I have here, which I think is probably I assume it's a Rat 2, to be honest. I bought it and never really did much with it after I decided I didn't like it. My one downside to the Rat, though, is I'm not a fan of the 1/8 inch power jack. I don't know if every single Rat... Mod. It's an easy mod. I agree. But for those that are going to buy it and don't want to mod, can't mod it, it's a frustrating power jack in my mind to have. Other than that, though, I mean, it's a distortion pedal. It sounds like a distortion pedal, but for me personally, it's probably a bit too aggressive, a bit too harsh. I love the sound of just a push tube amp, and this is not that. Everything we're going to talk about today probably is not that. So, yeah, I'm not against this as a first choice, but I think we'll probably find others that might be a better candidate.
Yeah. The first thing that came to my mind was it's a popular first, pedal to say. I agree. I think it is, for me, the Rat is very, I mean, I already said it feels more harsh to me when the funny thing is running the Rat with like a clean amp is it does not sound as great as running it with a slightly overdriven or like second channel amp. So yeah, I don't think it's a horrible first choice, but I think it was more of a popular first choice. There are some other really great, first choices for these distortion pedals.
And 5 out of 5 stars. I think that's very generous. Yeah.
All right. All right. So that was choice 1. Let's go to pick number 2 on their list. That is the Walrus Iron Horse V3 for those who like it heavy. That's the byline there. For those that like it heavy.
That's good.
Reasons to avoid too heavy for some players.
Too heavy.
So it must be made out of what, solid gold, or what kind of weights are we? What kind of weight are we talking about here?
They used a real horse, an iron horse.
Fair enough. I should have caught on to that. This is also one I own. I don't have the V3. I think I must have the V1 or V2 or something like that. But this is from my memory. It's been a while since I plugged this one in. Not being a distortion lover, this one definitely felt a bit smoother. It wasn't as aggressive as the Rat, but it's still very much a heavy gain, heavy distortion pedal. And again, I didn't really connect with it all that much, but I could see if you're into distortion, this could be an affordable choice for you to grab and test out, but not my personal taste. I'll say that.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very popular pedal that I see for boards. It's funny, the Rat and the Iron Horse are probably 2 of the most common ones that I find. I had one person, I asked them, I was like, so what's your favorite thing about the pedal? The guy goes, man, the top jacks.
I was just going to say that, actually.
I was like, top jacks? What do you mean top jacks? He goes, they're top mounted jacks. It makes all my pedals. It means I can squeeze more stuff on my board because there's not jacks on the side. And I was like, oh, okay. What do you like about the pedal? He goes, oh yeah, it's a distortion. So it was,
I wanted a delay, but then I saw this and it had top jacks, so I had to do it.
The Rat has top jacks too.
The Rat does have top. I will say the Rat, having
they were early to the party
on
that top jacks.
Yeah, they really were.
But I have these come through boards all the time, on boards, and I think I have a couple over here too. And it's, for all the distortions that I've had out there, this is definitely going to be like one of the most, not common, but one of the ones I more of like, is not as harsh or I guess tinny, bright, like a brighter sounding. It's this nice and thick distortion sound. I would say it has some more low, like not low end, but more thicker bass output when it feels like the distortion is not as bright. Even though there's a tone switch, there's a huge thing about, the tone switch sometimes doesn't give you enough low end. But no, I think this is a good choice too. Again, for distortions.
I don't know anything about this pedal, but just again thinking about like the top 10 distortion pedals. I mean, the Rat's been used on a lot of hit records. I don't know any hit record that's used the Iron Horse. And that's not a slight on Walrus. I'm just saying if we're relegating this to the best 10 out there, name a hit record that used an Iron Horse. That's really? Not from somebody that has the name official in their Instagram handle. With that said, I would like to break temporarily to speak about some of the sponsors that make the podcast possible every single week. And with that in mind, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Grant Klassen to speak to us about those sponsors.
I'm not deserving of that title. But I will say, if you are a distortion lover, after this, I think I'm slowly wavering back towards distortion curious. I will say, Mason, as soon as you said there's some musical distortions out there, you had me. And so I'm gonna air back on distortion curious now. Whether you are with me in that area or you just love distortion, the Guitar Sanctuary is the place to go to check out new pedals, new gear. Again, like what we talk about on these episodes with Chairmen of the Boards, you can typically find just about everything at the Guitar Sanctuary. And then once you have the gear, once you've decided on your pedal board, you can go to Brian Omilion himself and get it set up on a pedal board and just have the rig of your dreams. So check out the guitarsanctuary.com if you are guitar pedal curious like I am. That's the place to go. I also want to tell you guys about monocreators.com. This is a company all three of us know and love for many, many years now. There are not better soft bags out there, whether it's for your guitar, a dual gig bag, pedal boards. They do an awesome angled pedal board that I personally have a little bit of a crush on. That also comes with a soft bag for your board as well. And then lastly, of course, Brian knows and has just about their whole lineup of backpacks. And I personally am not normally a backpack lover until I came across this kind of new approach to them. All this different areas to store things, well protected, all that. So check out monocreators.com and use the code. Yes, there is a code. Chairmen for 10% off your order. CHAIRMEN. And I think you'll be happy you did. So let's get back into it. Back to the episode. I'll hand it back to you, Mason.
All right. So far we have Rat and Iron Horse. And I'm going to speed it up a little bit because I think, honestly, I'm more curious about your recommendations between the two of you than really anything that they've said so far. I guess the Rat could be a justifiable first position. Iron Horse, again, this is no slight on Walrus or the things that they do. They make wonderful pedals. I'm just thinking if we were, again, taking the top 10 pedals that are out there, top 10 best distortions, and somehow that made the top 10 list, I think even they would agree that it maybe is. There's been other more iconic distortion devices that have come subsequently. Let's move to number 3. This one I also have no experience with, so I can't really speak to it. It is the Odyssey by Hampstead Soundworks. They've given this one 4.5 stars. Do you all have any experience with this intergalactic driver, as it says on the front?
I do not.
No.
I don't think I've ever even heard of the company.
I also don't. I did look it up before this, trying to just get a little bit more info on it. And from what I can see on their website, the specs look pretty interesting. There's a lot of variations you can get with those toggle switches. So for those listening, there's 3 toggle switches, a few tone controls, gain and level, and that's basically the pedal. But it can go anything from quite heavy to, they say on their website, I think kind of like a heavy metal. So I can assume there's a distortion setting, but everything else, all the other settings, that they give as examples were more in the overdrive category, from boost to 808 to, those pushing your amp type sounds. So I think it's kind of more of a, for lack of a better term, maybe an all-in-one type pedal. And this is nothing against Hampstead, but whenever I hear, this pedal can do everything, that is an immediate red flag for me, because I've never found an overdrive or gain style pedal that can do everything and do it well. So I think you would probably get this pedal. You would find one sound that you know and love, and you would probably keep it there. So again, I've never played it, so I can't say it can't do everything really well. I would be extremely surprised if it could. But I think it's a 3-circuit gain pedal, 3 different circuits in it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a challenge. It's like a restaurant that says they do Greek, Italian, Thai, Mexican.
I have been to an Indian Italian restaurant before. And it kind of lives up to what we're talking about. It didn't leave me all that satisfied.
Well, there's definitely some staples. There's the tikka masala parmigiana.
Exactly, the curry fettuccine.
Yeah, yep. Just classics that we all know that we just like Mom used to make. Brian, any thoughts? Let me ask you both this question: have you ever put one of these on a pedal board? I mean, you guys are cranking out pedal boards, left, right, and center. Have you ever put one of these on a board?
No,
I've never seen one in person.
No.
I don't know.
It's not to say that it's not
is.
excellent. The pedigree of Hampstead, I think that is all quality, but to me, it seemed like it was like more small batch, like super boutique. Again, don't know that it was used on a hit record, but this is definitely, it seems to be like a more like, if you're real deep in the know, you might have heard of this pedal. But like a top 10 list, great for them. I think of so many other distortion pedals that are like classic circuits that have come before this that are really important.
Haven't shown up yet.
Yeah. Which magazine is this again?
This is Guitar Player magazine.
See, that's looking at, we're already
the player
only 3
of guitar.
in. Yeah, so like the fact that we're only 3
official,
in.
Guitar Player official.
official fan page. The fact that every single one of these pedals, at least that I have seen, when it shows like the best deal or something like that, yeah, I get that. But like, it's surprising to see a guitar magazine, not like having like guitar stores. I don't know. Maybe I'm biased just because I'm in a guitar store. But it's surprising to see that they're always doing like Amazon or something. I mean, I get it. It has literally nothing to do with the pedal. I just saw it. But yeah, no, I have never seen one of these pedals nor put one on a board because I've yet never seen a pedal. So,
an adult wrote this, believe it or not.
Interesting.
Let's move on to number 4. Now this one I actually think is a good choice.
Yeah.
If you're not able to look, it's the Friedman BEOD, and Dave Friedman is a known amp maker in sort of the Marshall style, hot rodded Marshall style. Maybe 5 or 6 years ago, he released a pedal version of the overdrive channel of his BE 100, and this is the fruits of his labor. Now, I'm not going to say that this has been used on countless hit records, but the flavor and voicing of the BE amp circuit is hugely popular, and I would say that this through a clean amp is very close to what you would expect from a nice hot rodded Marshall sound. It's got a full treble middle bass tone stack. It's got or I guess it's treble bass presence, no middle. It's got volume gain and tight. That might be like some sort of feedback control or something like that. But it's a really nice pedal actually for that sort of sound. I've played these a lot of times. I know a lot of people that have used them effectively and really love them. Again, I don't know that it's something that's been used on a bunch of hit records. I know that there's a lot of high rollers, big hitting guitar players that use his amps. I don't know about the pedal, but the pedal certainly very much sounds like as close as you could get to those style amps in a pedal format. So, and I've seen these a lot. So this may be, I think, a good pick for the list. How do you guys feel about the Friedman BEOD?
I was just curious with this. I haven't played this one in particular. I don't know, at least in the last couple of years, if I put it on a board. But I'm curious for you, Mason. Is this for the distortion curious like myself? Mm-hmm. Would this be a musical distortion choice? Would you recommend this as a dip your toes into the world of higher gain, distortions?
I think it would depend on what your vision of high gain was. This would definitely be if you want to sort of like a hot rodded 70s JMP or like a hot rodded JCM 800. That's kind of this sound. If you wanted something that was maybe a little bit more touch sensitive, interactive, I might show you something else. But I think that if you're just looking for a Zach Wilde sort of sound, or I don't know, something that just is kind of a grindier, kind of Marshall-y sound, I think this is a good, nice, totally serviceable pedal.
Very nice.
Yeah, we sell a lot of these.
Yeah.
It's a very, very common. These, okay, is it Friedman? I've had people say, "You got those Friedmans?" I'm like, I don't know what that is. Yeah, Friedman. But yeah, I mean these are very common, as well as some Mesa ones, especially in the higher gain. They tell me I need a higher gain. I need to do draw. I'm like, I don't exactly know how to compare that, but these are, the top 3, highest selling of these pedals in our store. I think we sell them so much we just can't sometimes keep them in stock. And I have played this one, and I have installed this on dozens of boards, and it's a great distortion for someone that doesn't like distortion. It's not very harsh sounding. I think the controls are very simple. There's more and more pedals coming out to where like there's hidden features in the knobs on some overdrives and stuff. It can get really confusing. But I think this is just really straight to the point. You don't need to get into a manual, and you can kind of dial up some sounds, because some of those pedals have like dip switches in the inside sometimes for like your pickups and stuff, and that can get, what if I try 3 different guitars? Like, do I have to flip over the dip switch every single time? So it's nice to see some pedals that are very straightforward like this one.
Yeah. All right, so that was 4. Let's go to 5. This one equally I have no experience with, but I know that they've been around for a long time. It is the TC Electronic Dark Matter, the affordable yet powerful distortion. I'm not sure what this is based on. It's in sort of the classic sort of single foot switch version of a TC Electronic pedal, like you would see the Hall of Fame or the flashback delay. I don't, again, know much about what this sounds like or what it's based on. I just know that it's inexpensive. I don't know, any experience with this one, gents?
I also do not have experience with this one. I haven't played it.
And I think that this is on its own problematic, that 3 individuals that are in this industry, and this has somehow made the top 5 list of best distortion pedals, and none of us have ever used it, put it on a pedal board. I don't know what to say. Next, we have number 6, the Seriatone Horse Breaker, a twist on 2 modern classics. So I'm presuming that the modern classics are the Blues Breaker Marshall pedal and the Klon, neither of which I would include in the distortion category, even when stacked. So I don't even know that this really qualifies as even a distortion pedal at this point. Any feedback from you gentlemen on the Horse Breaker? Now, I'm sure it can be a great sounding pedal. These are 2 great circuits, undoubtedly. But I don't even think about them in the course of distortion as a category.
I was going to say, like, Now we're talking about pedals I like. Like this is a pedal I can get behind. A Klon and a Blues Breaker in one box. Like if only it was a Distortion, I would be Distortion's biggest fan. But I would say the same. I don't think this is a Distortion. So yeah, this is the one I love the most so far. I think, but I don't think it qualifies. Brian?
So yeah.
I do not think this one qualifies as a Distortion. First of all, I did not know that this was even a pedal. Second of all, yeah,
where do I buy it?
Yeah, check Amazon. It says.
Yeah, exactly.
There's an Iron Horse, and then there's the Horse Breaker. So this is kind of like the like the one that trains the horse. You know, they used to use the term. You know, they're going to break the filly. You know, that's how they are going to kind of break it down so that it's able to be trained effectively. And so, you know, maybe you get both of these if you're into horseplay. And you have the Horse Breaker, you have the Iron Horse, and your pedalboard's done. You know,
I'd love to see the royalties that the equestrian community is getting from all these overdrives and game pedals. Because man, horses are very popular these days.
They need to write these pedals up in Horse and Hound.
Exactly.
Why is this in Guitar Player? It needs to be in Horse and Hound. All right. Still, so maybe top 5 were sort of Distortions. We're kind of getting away from that by 6. Let's see if 7 is redeeming.
Drum roll, please.
Number 7 is from Rev. This is the G3 Distortion. Now, I haven't played this Rev pedal in particular, but I actually have found that their pedals in general are actually quite good. Mm-hmm. And that they tend to, because they are an amplifier manufacturer that sort of specializes in higher gain stuff, they tend to have a good understanding of the bass line for that sound. I would presume that this is a good sounding pedal, and I've heard good things about them from other people. I haven't used one myself. Gentlemen, any ideas? At least, you know, this is a Distortion pedal, so that's a step in the right direction.
That is. I did a board for Rev a couple of years ago for NAMM, and this was one of them that was on it, and I can remember it because of the color. Mainly,
it's purple if you're listening.
It is purple if you're listening. Yeah. And I remember it because of all the different stuff, and I have to agree. Rev does some really great stuff. They had some newer boxes that they were coming, but they had just come out with the G3, and I think for the sheer size of it, if I can remember correctly, it's a little bit bigger than like an Archer, I think.
Okay.
I think if I can remember.
It's kind of a similar style enclosure to that.
Yeah. Like looking at it, it looks almost the same. It might even be around the same size. It's been a couple of years, but I remember playing it, and I didn't like it at first. I think it was because I was running it through like an Iridium or something, but it was just like really, really clean. But as soon as I took it out and plugged it into an amp and flipped it to like the little bit more edge of breakup channel on like say channel 2 of an amp I was using, there was more breakup in it. I liked it better. I think for the size of it, I think the price of it was really good too. It sounded really great, and we had tried it on a couple different types of guitars just to see how it would react to the guitars, and it handled them all really well. So I think this is a good choice for them. They gave it 4 stars. I'm not sure how their rating is, what they're rating it off of, but the different modes are really nice as well.
I think you guys are kind of focusing on the wrong thing here. All this tone garbage. Mm-hmm. It has top jacks, guys. What more could you want?
Top jacks.
Who cares what it does, what it sounds like? It has top jacks. So it's a big tick for me. I have not played this one, but the first thing I thought of when I saw this is similar to you, Mason. I respect Rev as a company, and I assume even with gear that I haven't played that they put out, I assume that they are going to be on the upper end, the upper echelon of that category of whatever they put out, because they just do a really good job. So like a couple pedals back, the TC one, none of us had played, and I was like, oh, well, what's that say? And then this one, you know, Brian's played it, but not as popular, but I'll still take this over other brands in the same category, just based on the reputation of the brand itself. So if that says anything, great. If not, I'm happy to move on.
All right. Well, before we go to 8, I want to quickly break to speak to you about some sponsors that make the podcast possible every single week. One of which are our friends over at Sweetwater and their new program, the Sweetwater Gear Exchange. Now, this is a site that Sweetwater has developed that allows their customers or anyone to buy and sell used gear with your peers, other musicians just like you and me, that have tried something out, decided it's not for them, and decided that they're either going to sell it, or maybe you're looking for a piece of used gear and you want to buy something from one of the sellers on the Gear Exchange. It is a wonderful way to not only get a lot of eyes on whatever it is that you're selling, but it also has the added benefit comparatively to, let's say, a Reverb or an eBay, where if you're a seller and you want to keep 100% of your earnings, you can do that by way of putting your earnings onto a Sweetwater gift card as opposed to just taking it in cash. And this will allow you to not have to pay any fees or any sort of transactional fees of any kind. You get to keep 100% of what you earn so long as it goes on a Sweetwater gift card. And if you're using it to buy stuff that you would ordinarily buy anyway from Sweetwater or another retailer, it's a great way to make sure that you keep 100% of what you earn. I really like that. Secondly, I feel like there's a great inventory of used gear on there, and you see a lot of the cool stuff that you might be interested in getting, and you can get a little bit of a discount by not buying it new, by getting it through something like the Gear Exchange. I feel like it's a great system that sort of takes the best elements of things like Reverb, eBay, and Craigslist and sort of combines it into one really cool system. You can create an account for free, get buying and get selling right away. That's the Gear Exchange from Sweetwater. Head over to sweetwater.com/used, and you can sign up there and get yourself started. And now I'm going to turn it over to Brian to speak to us about another great one of our sponsors, our friends over at Neural DSP.
Thank you. Yeah, so Neural DSP, as we all know, makes incredible plugins. They came out with the Quad Cortex. If you can see, it is to my left right now. They are running a discount code, Chairmen, CHAIRMEN, for 30% off all of their plugins. So this does not apply to any of their brand new ones that they just dropped, but those plugins will be accepted for the discount within, I think it's 90 days after they've been released, which is still a great, 30% off. I mean, that's, what do you guys say, 70% away from free?
70% away from free. Yep.
You wait 90 days and look at that. You got almost 70%, away from free. So go check them out, download their plugins, amazing stuff, and love Neural. I got Quad Cortexes all over the place. The discount code does not apply to the Quad Cortex, so it's only on the plugins right now. So yeah, go check them out.
But it could be a cool thing if you get the plugins, because I know that some of the future software updates may allow you to use those AMP plugins and have them available inside your Quad Cortex. So these could be things that you could always just upgrade with, and they really do sound pretty great. I've got a lot of experience with the Corey Wong one and the Soldano one. If I don't want to, mic up my Soldano, or I'm doing a little, kind of recording session, just want to keep it nice and easy, I've used it, and it actually sounds really great. If somebody's well-versed in the Soldano, their plugin really does nail that sound very closely, and is a fairly small margin of difference. And so really, they do a great job in the plugin game. I think that they're number one. So check them out. All right, let's go to number 8, and then we'll go to number 9, and then we'll go to our recommendations. So here is number 8. Also another surprise. They have put the King of Tone as a distortion option. Now, I believe that they've done this because you can order a King of Tone with like a higher gain channel, and then potentially, I guess, if you stack it, it will get closer to a distortion sound. However, just knowing the origins of the circuit and being rooted in a blues breaker, it just really doesn't produce a whole lot of gain, even in the high gain mode. And I've certainly played various versions of this that include that, whatever is the red channel, the high gain red channel. I don't know that I would still qualify this as a distortion pedal. I think it's still very much in the overdrive category. So I don't know that this is, although a great pedal, would really fit into this category of true distortion. Do you have any comments or feedback? I mean, even if it does, let's just pretend it does get into full-blown distortion. Is that how this pedal is really known? Is that what people are using it for? Or is it sort of like, I don't know, like a fringe use that 1 out of every 100 King of Tone orders comes in with this distortion mod to the, the higher gain channel? I don't know.
I mean, I get these on a lot of boards. I'll see more of these than I'll see, a lot of pedals, but they're if you're waiting, the waiting list is years long, as there are reasons to avoid. I think it's like 3 or 4 years right now is the wait. But like you can do like the high gain mod or the multiple jacks on the back or anything. But yeah, it's interesting that they consider this a high gain, because it's more widely known to be used as an overdrive, stacking both sides to get a more overdriven or maybe overdrive and clean tone. So yeah, it's not usable as a boost. Like, they have the options on what it's doing, but none of these options make it a distortion pedal.
Yeah, I don't have too much more to add. I think it's a dual overdrive pedal, and a good one at that. Even though I don't necessarily connect with this one as much, I do think it has its rightful place, but not in the distortion realm.
All right.
Well, also, I checked Amazon, and it's not on Amazon.
Oh, come on.
Not on Amazon. Okay. Well,
I looked at the first one that came up was the King of Cologne.
King of Cologne. Nice. All these names, man. Very, very creative names.
And it looks just like it.
Here we go. Now we're talking.
There
all right.
we go.
So
now
here is the last of their recommendations. Number 9, the Boss Metal Zone. The byline is, yes, we're serious. So, the Metal Zone, as Grant had alluded to earlier, is sort of become a meme in the guitar community, where it's sort of, I don't know, a punchline to sort of exaggerate, what maybe is considered to be a bad tone. I think it's interesting that they chose this pedal as opposed to the DS1, which I think is a more well-known distortion as it relates to the Boss line. It's probably the most classic, and was frankly used on a lot of hit records, whether we're talking about Steve Vai or Joe Satriani. That was a fairly ubiquitous device. Many of us have owned that. They used to be the pedal you could get at Guitar Center for $40 or something like that for a long time, especially when I was a kid. That's not to say that the Metal Zone is bad. I mean, certainly it's in the distortion category. It's got a ton of gain on tap. And it has a very specific sound. I mean, certainly, this has a lot more merits to me than many of the choices that they had put on here from 1 through 9. I don't know that I would pick this as the epitome of tone as it relates to distortion pedals, but at least we're having a proper sort of categorical choice for the Metal Zone MT2 from Boss. Any thoughts, gentlemen, on this one before we get into our own recommendations for distortion pedals?
I think the thing I like about this one, and this is me being totally serious, is it has a quite powerful EQ section. So high, mids, mid sweep, I believe, is what that mid frequency is, kind of like a Q that you can adjust, and then obviously lows.
So it has two like concentric pots in the middle, like dual pots, where the middle is doing a different frequency than the outside pot. They're kind of like stacked on top of each other.
So, I mean, you can get this pedal to clean up a little bit. I have owned one, again, being totally serious. And I did find the EQ a little bit confusing, as in they're like I just said, there are quite a few options, and it is quite powerful. But I do believe you could dial in some good sounds with this, and it would have its place. It's just unfortunate. There's so many memes around it that if you have it on your board, people think you're joking. But I don't think this would be my number one choice, and it's obviously not Guitar Player's number one choice. But it does have its place. It has so much gain available. Yeah, I think it makes sense to be on the list. I thought it would be higher up, to be honest, just being what it is. But it makes sense to be on the list, and I think it has its spot.
Okay. Brian, any thoughts?
It's I also agree. It is surprising that they picked this over the DS1, because whenever, like, when we started talking in the beginning of this, and you said Distortion, I immediately thought DS1, that bright orange enclosure and everything. I don't have a lot of experience with this unit. Looking at, if I can widen my screen. It's hard to give an opinion when I haven't used it. But I will say this is definitely a pedal that I never see on boards ever. And I did a pedal board that was had 15 boss pedals, and I still didn't see this on the board. So I can't give as much input onto this one, but it is surprising that this metal zone was picked over the Distortion, personally.
Yeah. All right, so those were the picks of Guitar Player magazine. Surprising to me, I would say, just to summarize, I think some of these seem fairly divorced from the classic circuits, the most musical circuits, or even choosing pedals that actually fit the category of distortion. I want to get into our recommendations, and I think that these are going to be choices that I would say, or at least as far as my recommendations are concerned, that, as I told Grant earlier, they will be musical choices. They will be touch sensitive. They will be versatile in many cases. And if you are somebody who is traditionally been distortion averse, these might be devices that you might want to try out that might get you your foot in the door distortion wise and feel like maybe this could be something that you could use. I think the first choice for me for distortion pedals is the Maxon Sonic Distortion, also known as the SD9.
I'm going to write this down.
Yeah. Sam David 9, SD9. This is a really, really musical distortion pedal that has amazing cleanup with your guitar volume pot. So when you are down at 2 or 3, it is totally clean, almost how like a fuzz face gets like sparkly clean. And then you can roll it up into this fire-breathing monster of distortion. It sounds great with single coils. It sounds great with humbuckers. It is incredibly interactive. The challenge with them, however, is that you need to have the tone knob fairly low. And then when I say low, it probably needs to be below, I would say, 9 o'clock. And I would frankly start with it off and then just roll it in to taste, because pretty much all it's adding is like 2K and above, really treble frequencies. There's also a version of it that is a signature pedal of Scott Henderson that's rooted in the SD9, that's made by a company called TWA, and that's no relationship to the former airline, that's called the SH9. And it's sort of an optimized SD9, and it also gives you a little bit more flexibility in the tone control so that you're not having to have it so low in order to facilitate kind of the sweet spot sound. And I believe it was actually designed by the original designer that did a lot of the Maxon pedals. So first choice for me would be the Maxon SD9 or the TWA SH9, which again is just a derivative of that. I would not go for any of the modded versions of it. There are people who do mods to try to add back in mid-range. These all affect the sound of this pedal and sort of take away from its glory. Another great one that I think is ubiquitous in our industry, and a lot of derivative pedals come from it, is the Marshall Governor pedal. And some people might categorize it as sort of on the edge of an overdrive or distortion. They sound really great. They're very musical. I think if you're somebody who's into the sound of the Friedman BEOD, it's maybe a little less gainy than that, or can be a little less gainy than that. Some great pedals that are derivative of that would be things like the JHS Andy Timmons pedal, or the Angry Charlie MI Audio Crunchbox. These are all sort of representative of that sort of sound. They are really great. The Carl Martin Plexitone, also derivative of that. Really, really nice pedal. Has some nice sounds to it. I think the Rat choice was a good one. I know it's got a sort of a specific sound, but it can also be really great for distortion, for a specific type of distortion. Another one that's really great is the EVH 5150, and that's made by MXR. And that's a really great distortion pedal that sort of emulates the sound of a Soldano-y, or kind of I guess apparently the newest Fender incarnation of the EVH amp. But a lot of these are still rooted in sort of the SLO. The original 5150 from PV was basically an SLO done on a budget. So it has a lot of that sound and essence, and I think it's a really good sounding distortion pedal, undoubtedly. And another great one is the Sir Riot. I think is a really great distortion pedal that kind of has sort of that hot rodded Marshalls type sound. I think they sound very convincing. They make a mini version that is also very great for the size. I think that's also a really great choice that is going to get you in the zone. And I would say for distortion pedals, I think those would be my initial picks to just, trying to get into the distortion realm. You want something that is, either doing sort of hot rodded Marshall sound, or just has like a really nice smooth distortion sound like the SD9 or SH9. Those are all really great picks. Before we go on to Grant and Brian's picks, I want to break one last time to talk about some sponsors that make the podcast possible. Firstly, I want to talk about our friends over at Stringjoy. Now, if you're somebody like me who has very corrosive sweat, you will destroy strings at a rapid pace. And it's almost forced me to go exclusively with coated strings until I discovered Stringjoy strings. Now, they do offer coated versions, but I prefer to not use coated strings if I can help it, just to get the maximum amount of tone and not have anything over the string that might blanket that tone in any way. And I found that not only do they have strings that last a long time for me that are uncoated, but they sound great comparatively to the competitors in the market. I really love what they're doing, handmade one at a time in Nashville, Tennessee. Many professionals in the industry are using them, and I can't say enough about how great these strings are in terms of the quality, how long they last, and again, not having to go to a coated string to get the feel and the sound that I want has been really, really great. Highly recommend you check out our friends over at Stringjoy. They also offer subscription services if you're interested in having strings delivered to you every single month. Head over to stringjoy.com, use the coupon code BOARDS, BOARDS, and get 10% off your order. Now I'm going to turn it over to Brian to talk about one more of our sponsors.
Thank you. Yeah. So our next sponsor is going to be Bestronix, or known as BTPA. Brad is, definitely the go-to guy when you need, specialty connectors, rack rails, anything that, they handle. Any and all things pedalboard related, touring, racks, all sorts of, snakes and audio accessories. I mean, connectors galore. Even the little DC connectors that most of us use to solder for builds are all from Bestronix, but they have a discount code DACHAIRS, DACHAIRS, for 10% off any of their stuff. Go check them out. Order as much as you want with that code, and Brad will get it off as quick as possible. So I highly recommend Bestronix. Been using them for years and I love them. So I'm gonna throw it back to you, Mason.
All right, and so gentlemen, your picks on best distortion devices. Now I know that this may be difficult as
Yes.
you all are distortion averse. But any distortion picks for those listeners or viewers out there, or just good of the order comments as it relates to distortion pedals? Grant, would you like to start?
Yeah, I think you summed it up very well. I'm probably not the best person to be giving recommendations on distortion. I can only speak for what I've tried, and the main ones that come to mind. I mean, I've tried the Iron Horse, obviously, in the Rat, and a couple others. If I was going to go into a distortion after today's episode, though, I would just be going. I wrote down your recommendations, Mason. To be honest, I would need something musical. And I think that's been my biggest problem with distortions is my experience in the past, Metal Zone, the Rat, all these other ones, they just take over so much of the core sound of my guitar in comparison to what I'm looking for that I just find it really hard to connect with. So that musical aspect is really important. So I'm gonna pick up the Maxon, the top of your list that was the SD9. I'm gonna pick that one up and I'm gonna try it. Maybe I'll get back to you guys later. I also really am curious, distortion curious about the Rev G3. And I don't know if it's just that it's purple. It might be the top jacks. It could be a whole bunch of things, but I really want to try that one as well. So yeah, I'm gonna probably get back to you guys with some thoughts after I've had some more experience.
I as well am not one to really give good recommendations for distortion. It's just not my flavor, but I will say the Sir Riot, the one that Mason had said, is a great one. It's a huge seller. The fact, especially with the new compact size, the mini size, is really great. I have actually installed this on a lot of boards before and have played through it. Again, I'm not a huge distortion person, but for what it can do and the size of it, it's a great pedal. I would go off of Mason's recommendations for a lot of these distortion pedals because I have heard a lot of them. I am actually interested in the Maxon one too. So, but my rec, is that one.
I would say though, from the Guitar Player magazine article, my favorite distortion that I really want to get is the Horsebreaker. The one that is not the distortion. I really want to try that one. It's but I think it was a good conversation. As always, I mean, Mason, when you and Brian, when you guys are chatting about things that you are passionate about, things you love within this industry, I always take really good notes and I always come away with more than what I came into the episode with. So I appreciate your guys' thoughts and feedback, and I'm the better for it.
Same.
Well, gentlemen, I think to wrap up today, that was again the Guitar Player Magazine's top 9 best distortion pedals out there. I think we can confidently say that yet again we have some pretty stark contrast between where we land on some of these pedals and maybe some of the opinions that are posited on their, let's say, highly regarded website and magazine publication. I don't know that in good faith that I could endorse many of the choices on this article, but hopefully some of our recommendations and maybe some of the analysis here will help you choose a distortion pedal that's going to be a better pick for your rig, something that again is musical and is going to allow you to get the most out of what it is that you are going for your own tone, whether that be going super high gain or having something that cleans up really well or getting something that's more Marshall-y or hot rodded Marshall sound. I think that we've given some good picks today, and I think that we've maybe told you some things to consider in the recommendations that were given for Guitar Player, and not just take that as gospel. Until next time, gentlemen, good day. Let's hop back into Grant's Miata with the automatic transmission.
There we go.
And let's head on back down the road to Tone Town.
See you guys.
Yeah.